Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here, and in this video I wanted to talk about a gaming PC build guide or build outline, whatever you guys want to call it, that will be fully ready and compatible with the upcoming RX 480. Now what I mean by compatible and ready is that all the parts in this build will be able to work with the RX 480 without any issues at all, and there shouldn't be any bottlenecks anywhere. If you've been following the PC hardware industry lately and have paid attention to AMD specifically, then you probably already know that the RX 480 is kind of a big deal. Why? Well, AMD has decided to make a beast of a graphics card that has great price to performance ratio targeted at the mainstream consumer. This new graphics card starts from just $200 and will supposedly offer performance between a 390 and a GTX 980. So this card will be very popular amongst a lot of enthusiasts, gamers, and people interested in PC hardware in general. Now I won't be targeting a specific price point or anything like that with this build. I'm not going to call this a budget-oriented build or an enthusiast-oriented build. However, the parts I have picked out are within an acceptable range, so no surprises or anything, and there's nothing overkill here. Also, I would like to mention that if you're interested in building a PC consisting of parts revolving around the RX 480, then you don't necessarily have to use these exact parts. You can customize your PC so that it suits your preferences. You can use this video as a guideline to get you started and to get you on the right path. Another important thing I want to mention was that prices on these parts may vary depending on when you're watching this video. Alright, so at this point you're probably starting to get bored, so without wasting any more time, let's just jump right into the parts list. For the CPU, we have one of the most popular on the market currently, and that is none other than the Intel Core i5-6500 based on the 6th generation Skylake architecture. I won't go really in depth with the overview of some of these parts, because you can search up all those fine little details for yourself, but I will give a quick summary, so don't worry about that. This is a quad-core CPU with no hyper-threading technology enabled, but this is a very capable processor, great single-core performance, highly recommended for a gaming build. It's got an operating frequency of 3.2 GHz and can turbo up to 3.6 GHz when under load. The reason why I went with this processor is to ensure that the RX 480 would not be bottlenecked in any games. So paired with the RX 480, you should be pretty much golden for any game out there and games coming out in the future for quite some time now. Even in games that are recommending i7s, you should still have no trouble playing them at good high quality settings while obtaining a great frame rate. Since this is a locked CPU, you won't be obviously doing any overclocking. Using the stock cooler that comes with it should do the job just fine, so you can save some money there by not having to purchase an aftermarket cooler. In regards to gaming, this processor will offer you great bang for your buck. Moving on to the motherboard, we have the Gigabyte GA-H170-D3HP LGA1151 motherboard. This motherboard is a full ATX form factor board with plenty of great features, expansion slots, and in general offers great quality from a reputable brand. Now obviously I went with a non-Z170 board since you aren't going to be overclocking. This board has got support for DDR4 memory, plenty of options in the back I/O such as 6 USB ports, an Intel GBE LAN port, VGA, DVI, HDMI, and even USB 3.1 Type-C. Along with all that, this motherboard has plenty of expansion slots, supports for SLI or Crossfire, 6 SATA ports, 3 of which are SATA Express, and one of my favorites, an M.2 slot in case you want to add an NVMe SSD like the 950 in the future. The onboard audio is quite impressive with an isolated chip design to prevent all that static interference from ruining your listening experience. This motherboard also looks quite aesthetically pleasing with a black and gold finish, and also includes an LED trace path to add some colorful bling to your setup. Overall, a fantastic feature-packed motherboard that will get the job done. For the RAM, we have a pair of Kingston HyperX Fury Black 8GB sticks for a total of 16GB of memory clocked at 2133 MHz. With RAM becoming so cheap now, going for 16GB is pretty much a no-brainer at this point. More and more games coming out are recommending 16GB of RAM, and it will save you the trouble from having to add more later on. However, if your budget is pretty tight, then going for 8GB of RAM should work out for you just fine as well. But for $60, you're getting a really good deal here on DDR4 RAM. I remember paying slightly more than that just a few months ago for just 8GB of DDR4 memory. I'm still using just 8GB of RAM and haven't had any issues so far, but I do plan on upgrading to 16GB of RAM myself in the near future. So 16GB of DDR4 RAM, 2133MHz with a cast latency rating of 14. Not much more to say than that. Alright, so for our storage, we've actually got two parts here. This first part I'm going to mention is the Samsung 850 EVO 250GB solid state drive. This is a great solid state drive with excellent read and write speeds to use as your main boot drive. Here you will install your operating system along with some of your main applications and programs. You can also squeeze in some of your favorite most played games as well. The secondary storage solution in this build will be a Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB 7200 RPM hard drive, which will hold the rest of your video game library and other media. You don't necessarily need to have an SSD for your games, since all it will do is improve load times, and a hard drive is pretty decent at doing just that. Having an SSD as your main boot drive is so important and beneficial. I can't express this enough, and if you're using an SSD or have used one in the past, then I'm sure you can agree. Your boot times are just so much faster. The fact that you can get into Windows in a matter of seconds and be browsing the web or have a game launched is very convenient. Having an SSD and mass storage solution combo is pretty much the way to go these days. I personally have one SSD as my main boot drive and 3 1TB hard drives for my mass storage. For the power supply, I went with the EVGA GQ 650W 80+ Gold certified semi-modular power supply. This is a high quality unit built by EVGA using exceptional components within it and built durable, including 100% Japanese capacitors. So many of you might be wondering why I went with the 650W power supply for this build. Isn't that a bit overkill? Well, yes, to a degree, but there's a good reason for that. This power supply will give you a lot of headroom for future upgrades. And one of the main reasons why I went with this power supply is because if you recall from AMD's press conference at Computex, they showed off the performance of two RX 480s. Many people will be interested in getting two RX 480s since they will offer high level performance in games and will cost less than a GTX 1080, so that's very appealing. So this power supply unit will easily be able to power up your whole system, including two 480s. If you have no plans for Crossfire, then you can always downgrade to a cheaper power supply. In that case, I recommend the EVGA 500B 80+ Bronze certified 500W power supply. A power supply which obviously won't be as high quality as the gold unit, but still should suffice for the entire build. So for the case, there wasn't any real reason in particular why I chose this case. This part of the build can be changed to whatever you like and whatever suits your preferences. The case I decided to choose was the NZXT S340. This is a beautiful ATX mid-tower case that should house all your wonderful components together and show them off while doing that. This case looks aesthetically great. It has a simple look and finish to it, but still looks elegantly pleasing. This case will provide ample airflow throughout your entire system as well. For your front I/O, you get two USB 3.0 ports, a headphone and microphone jack, power and reset buttons. Inside the case, you got enough room for expansion, good spacing for cable management, and a power supply shroud to hide your power supply and the clutter of cables that will result in a very clean build. One of my favorite things about this case. Now up until this point, I have covered every component you will need in order to build your PC, except for the graphics card obviously, which is the RX 480. Now depending on which model you buy, the 4GB or 8GB version, and which add-in board partner card you pick up, will affect the final price of this build. Now the RX 480 hasn't hit the store shelves yet, so I can't give you an exact price of the final build, but according to the parts in this build guide and the MSRP of the RX 480, you can expect this build to be around $800 to $900. So here you're getting a very solid build. With this gaming PC, you should be easily maxing out games at 1080p and achieve over 60 FPS. This build will also be very capable of playing games at 1440p at max or near max settings while also achieving a great frame rate. Now I don't know exactly how much performance the RX 480 will offer, but judging from what we've seen, this will be a pretty powerful card for the price. It's absolutely amazing to see how much your performance per dollar increases with new tech. There is a lot of flexibility with this build. If you're interested in overclocking, then you can pick up an i5 6600K along with an aftermarket cooler and swap the motherboard with one that has the Z170 chipset. Of course, the price will increase, but it's good to know that the options are there and if the occasion arises for an upgrade in the near future. To make it convenient for you guys, I will also have a PCPartPicker link down in the video description along with links to the parts individually. Well, that pretty much concludes this video and covers the RX 480 build. If you found this video to be informative and helpful, leave a like. Leave any questions or thoughts down below in the comment section, and if you want to see more videos like this, then make sure you're subscribed. Thank you guys so much for your time, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.